All right, so real quick, I'm going to try to give my interpretation of a negative cost to borrow and kind of just theorize on it. When you see instances of negative borrow fees or negative anything as far as interest rates go, because that's ultimately what that is. It's an interest rate for something that you don't have, for something that you don't have that you're borrowing, and the way that the person lending makes money is via an interest, right? So we're going to try to use the whiteboard that I'm still getting used to, or the Etch-a-Sketch bullshit thing. Um, so what I'm wondering is uh, why this won't work. Oh, maybe okay. So if you have this pool of shares that can be borrowed, right? You have these borrowable shares, and you're going to have some collection of people that or groups that want to take from this pool. And all of them might have their own objectives, their own alpha that they're trying to maintain. This guy has room for 5% loss. This guy has, wait, what? This guy has 10% loss, and maybe this is 20%, and then they'll have proportionate yields that they're trying to get on this trade, or returns rather. All of them have their different risk profiles, but then you have this idiot over here who had been doing this for a couple years. He needs all of this. And he has a very complex multi-leg strategy going on, multi-entity strategy going on to compartmentalize risk and try to allow for this loss that he had already accrued on this particular stock and others to go away, to kind of just erode. But the problem is that this strategy is completely contingent upon having very um, predictable moves, predictable everything, such that he can then employ different inverse trades, if you will, inverse returns. If this particular trade of going short is a 10% loss, that means that the stock went up 10% based off of some absolute point. He needs to make 10% somewhere else, right? This has to counteract. Otherwise, this loss, when it becomes realized, maybe let's say he got 9% this quarter. When that loss becomes realized, it goes into a bucket. That's not a bucket. It goes into a bucket of some sort that has an additional 1% to it. This bucket, at every particular interval of percentage, has to be handled. It has to go somewhere. You could call this covering. You could call it closing out. Well, not necessarily closing out, because that implies an absolution to it. But in some way, shape, or form, this bucket has to be emptied at every particular interval. This could be whenever we see, rapid upward movement on the charts. This, excuse me, this could be the bucket. This could be the bucket. This could be the bucket. I don't know, right? But the entire point is that you have a predictable way to let these charts maneuver, and you're not even really letting them. You're forcing them. You're forcing particular navigations on the charts such that you can then adapt the rest of your portfolio or portfolios to ultimately make up for a net loss. You're trying to cancel that out with something else that yields equal to or greater than value of what this fuck up is ultimately yielding in itself. So let's get back to the idea of this pool of shares. These are borrowable shares, right? So you had the three guys who are just looking to get in and out, and then you got idiot over here, right? He needs to have these charts move a particular way, right? And if you have the ability to do that, right, maybe perhaps you control a quarter of all the order flow in the equities market. You have the ability to do this, which means that you can make your portfolio more predictable to some extent. I hate using the word portfolio because the implications of this are much greater than that of just a portfolio and a P&L of that. But just for the sake of explanation, we're going to keep it at that. you need to maintain a certain linear movement, right? And I'm not talking about the chart as a chart, right? I'm not talking about it like that. I mean that the delta movements of all of this have to come out to some linear result. If point A to point B gets canceled out down here, but then makes up for it again up here, ultimately you're looking for a delta neutral event to occur, because that's what allows for predictability. And that's why these charts look the same, and that's why I keep postulating that the algorithms, the algorithm, singular, I use the singular expression of that for the sake of simplicity. But that's why I've been saying that this can't be changed. It can't be changed because of the fact that this entire scheme is revolving around predictability. They have to be able to predict chaos. Predictable chaos ultimately is not chaos. So you need to have a linear outcome throughout all of this that is predictable. The idea of predictability is the byproduct of having a linear result. So what do? You just borrow whatever becomes available and you stash it. You don't sell it short. You don't sell it short, but you have these shares on hand such that in the event that you need to, whether it's for a liquidity crunch or there's movement going on in the chart that is adverse to the linear goal, you have these on hand. Also, no one else gets to touch them. These guys, no, right? What do you also get? You also get really low cost to borrow. You get really low cost to borrow because of the fact that you have all of these shares on hand. You have a concentration of what's available. Also because the guy, I don't know, on the third floor or across the block knows there aren't any available. That would theoretically cause actually an increase in cost to borrow because it becomes more in demand. But what if these other guys realize it's not a good idea to go short on this? What if there is no demand to go short, only by one guy? So the entire goal here is for predictability and also to eliminate any factors that could cause unpredictability, any noise. And that's where you start to see this really odd pattern across all of this. It's just it's too consistent. There are too many constants in this for this to just not be an organic stock. It just doesn't make sense. All of these metrics, all of these numbers, all of these the timings, it's too seemingly calculated, and all we're trying to do is find the rhythm to it. That's it. We know that the symphony is playing, and it sounds like dog shit, but we're trying to figure out what's the next verse, what's the next chorus. Because when you can figure out the timing of it, when you can figure out the key to it, when you can figure out all of the crescendos, that's when you can start to put the score together. And when you put the score together, that's when you win.